Air Canada is the flag carrier and largest airline of Canada. The airline, founded in 1936, provides scheduled and charter air transport for passengers and cargo to 178 destinations worldwide. It is the world's seventh-largest passenger airline by fleet size, and the airline is a founding member of the Star Alliance. Air Canada's corporate headquarters are located in Montreal, Quebec, while its largest hub is Toronto Pearson International Airport, located in Mississauga, Ontario. Air Canada had passenger revenues of $12.38 billion Canadian dollars in 2013. The airline's regional service is Air Canada Express. Canada's national airline originated from the Canadian federal government's 1936 creation of Trans-Canada Airlines, which began operating their first transcontinental flight routes in 1938. In 1965, TCA was renamed Air Canada following government approval. After the deregulation of the Canadian airline market in the 1980s, the airline was privatized in 1988. In 2001, Air Canada acquired their largest rival, Canadian Airlines. In 2003, the airline filed for bankruptcy protection and in the following year emerged and reorganized under the holding company ACE Aviation Holdings Inc. In 2006, 34 million people flew with Air Canada as the airline celebrated their 70th anniversary. Air Canada is recognized as the Skytrax Best International Airline in North America, and was ranked as a 4-star airline by Skytrax in 2013. Air Canada has a fleet of Airbus A330, Boeing 767, Boeing 777, and Boeing 787, wide-body jetliners on long-haul routes and uses the Airbus A320 family aircraft, including the A319, A320, and A321 variations, and Embraer E170/E190 family aircraft on short-haul routes. The carrier's operating divisions include Air Canada Cargo, Air Canada Express and Air Canada Rouge. Their subsidiary, Air Canada Vacations, provides vacation packages to over 90 destinations. Together with their regional partners, the airline operates on average more than 1,530 scheduled flights daily. History. Trans-Canada Airlines. Air Canada's predecessor, Trans-Canada Airlines, was created by legislation of the federal government as a subsidiary of Canadian National Railway on April 11, 1936. The newly created Department of Transport under Minister C.D. Howe desired an airline under government control to link cities on the Atlantic coast to the Pacific coast. Using $5 million in government seed money, 2 Lockheed Model 10 Electras and 1 Boeing Stearman biplane were purchased from Canadian Airways. Experienced airline executives from United Airlines and American Airlines were brought in. Passenger flights began on September 1, 1937, with an Electra carrying 2 passengers and mail from Vancouver to Seattle, a $14.20 round trip. On July 1, 1938, TCA hired their first flight attendants. Transcontinental routes from Montreal to Vancouver began on April 1, 1939, using 12 Lockheed Model 14 Super Electras and 6 Lockheed Model 18 Lodestars. By January 1940 the airline had grown to about 500 employees. In 1942, Canadian Pacific Airlines suggested a merger with TCA. Prime Minister Mackenzie King rejected the proposal and introduced legislation regulating TCA as the only airline in Canada allowed to provide transcontinental flights. With the increase in air travel after World War II, CP Air was granted 1 coast-to-coast flight, and a few international routes. Originally headquartered in Winnipeg, which was also the site of the National Maintenance Base, the federal government moved the headquarters to Montreal in 1949. The maintenance base later also moved east. With the development of the Reserve in 1953, TCA became the first airline in the world to use a computer reservation system with remote terminals. By 1964, TCA had grown to become Canada's national airline, and in 1964 future Prime Minister Jean Craig Copyright 10 submitted a private member's bill to change the name of the airline from Trans-Canada Airlines to Air Canada, the name TCA had been using in French. This bill failed, but it was later resubmitted and passed, with the name change taking effect on January 1, 1965. 1970s, early years. During the 1970s, government regulations ensured Air Canada's dominance over domestic regional carriers and rival CP Air. Short-haul carriers were each restricted to one of 5 regions, and could not compete directly with Air Canada and CP Air. CP Air was subject to capacity limits on intercontinental flights, and restricted from domestic operations. Air Canada's fares were also subject to regulation by the government. In the late 1970s, with reorganization at CNR, Air Canada became an independent Crown corporation. The Air Canada Act of 1978 ensured that the carrier would compete on a more equal footing with rival regional airlines and CP Air, and ended the government's direct regulatory control over Air Canada's routings, fares, and services. The Act also transferred ownership from Canadian National Railway to a subsidiary of the national government. Deregulation of the Canadian airline market, under the new National Transportation Act, 1987 officially opened the airline market in Canada to equal competition. The carrier's fleet expansion saw the acquisition of Boeing 727, Boeing 747, and Lockheed TriStar jetliners. With new fleet expenditures outpacing earnings, Air Canada officials indicated that the carrier would need additional sources of capital to fund their modernization. By 1985, the Canadian government was indicating a willingness to privatize both Canadian National Railways and Air Canada. In 1988, Air Canada was privatized, and 43% of shares are sold on the public market, with the initial public offering completed in October of that year. By this time, long-haul rival CP Air had become Canadian Airlines International following their acquisition by Pacific Western Airlines. On December 7, 1987, Air Canada became the first airline in the world with a fleet-wide non-smoking policy, and in 1989 became completely privatized. The successful privatization effort was aided by a public relations effort led by company president Claude I. Taylor and chief executive officer Pierre J. Gignaut. 1990s, strategic changes. In the early 1990s, Air Canada encountered financial difficulties as the airline industry slumped in the aftermath of the Persian Gulf War. In response, the airline restructured management, hiring former Delta Airlines executive Hollis L. Harris as its CEO. Harris restructured the airline's operations, reduced management positions, moved the corporate headquarters to Dorval Airport, and sold the en route card business to Diners Club in 1992. By 1994, Air Canada had returned to profitability. The same year also saw the carrier winning route access to fly from Canada to the new Kansai Airport in Osaka, Japan. In 1995, taking advantage of a new US-Canada Open Skies agreement, Air Canada added 30 new trans-border routes. In May 1997, Air Canada became a founding member of the Star Alliance, with the airline launching code shares with several of the alliance's members. The second half of the 1990s saw the airline earn consistent profits, totaling $1 billion for the 1997 to 1999 period. On September 2, 1998, pilots for Air Canada launched the company's first pilot strike, demanding higher wages. At the end of 1999, the Canadian government relaxed some of the aviation regulations, aimed at creating a consolidation of the Canadian airline industry. That year, American Airlines in conjunction with Canadian financial company Onex Corporation, launched a takeover bid availing rival Canadian Airlines and Air Canada, spurring Air Canada to submit a competing offer for their largest rival. 2000s, merger and reorganization. In January 2001, Air Canada acquired Canada's second-largest air carrier, Canadian Airlines, merging the latter's operations, becoming the world's 12th largest airline in the first decade of the 21st century. As Air Canada gained access to their former rival's financial statements, officials learned that the carrier was in worse financial shape than was previously believed. An expedited merger strategy was pursued, but in summer 2000 integration efforts led to flight delays, luggage problems and other frustrations. However, Service improved following Air Canada officials pledged to do so by January 2001. The airline was confronted by the global aviation market downturn and increased competition, posting back-to-back losses in 2001 and 2002. Bankruptcy and restructuring. As Air Canada had employed a scorched earth policy to prevent the Onyx proposed acquisition as one of its lines of defense, they had burdened themselves with onerous contracts with virtually all of their suppliers. As a result, on April 1, 2003, Air Canada filed for protection under the Companies Creditors Arrangement Act. They emerged from this protection on September 30, 2004, 18 months later. During the period of bankruptcy protection, the company was subject to two competing bids from Cerberus Capital Management and Victor Lee. The Cerberus bid would have seen former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney installed as chairman, being recruited by Cerberus International Advisory Board Chair Dan Quayle, the former Vice President of the United States. Cerberus was rejected because they had a reputation of changing existing employee pension agreements, a move strongly opposed by ACE. At first, Air Canada selected Victor Lee's Trinity Time Investments, which initially asked for a board veto and the chairmanship in return for investing $650 million in the airline. Lee, who holds dual citizenship from Canada and Hong Kong, later demanded changes to the pension plan, but since the unions refused to budge, the bid was withdrawn. Finally, Deutsche Bank unveiled an $850 million financing package for Air Canada, if they would cut $200 million in annual cost-cutting in addition to the $1.1 billion that the unions agreed on in 2003. It was accepted after last-minute talks between CEO Robert Milton and CAW President Buzz Hargrove got the union concessions needed to let the bid go through. ACE Aviation Holdings became the new parent company under which the reorganized Air Canada was held. In October 2004, Canadian singer Celine Dion became the face of Air Canada, hoping to relaunch the airline and draw in a more international market after an 18-month period of bankruptcy protection. She recorded her single, You and I, which subsequently appeared in several Air Canada commercials. Fleet modernization. On October 31, 2004, the last Air Canada Boeing 747 flight landed in Toronto from Frankfurt as AC-A AC.B, ending 33 years of 747 service with the airline. The Boeing 747-400 fleet was replaced by the Airbus A340 fleet. On October 19, 2005, Air Canada unveiled a new aircraft color scheme and uniforms. A Boeing 767-300ER was painted in the new silver-blue color, and the black tail was replaced with a new version of the maple leaf known as the frosted leaf. On November 9, 2005, Air Canada agreed to renew their wide-body fleet by purchasing 16 Boeing 777s, and 14 Boeing 787-8s. They placed options on 18 Boeing 777s and 46 Boeing 787-8s and -9s. All of the 777s will be powered by the GE90-115B engine, and the 787-8s, by the Genx engine. Deliveries of the 777s began in March 2007 and deliveries of the 787s began in May 2014. As the 777s and the 787s are delivered, they will gradually retire all Boeing 767s and Airbus A330s. On April 24, 2007, Air Canada announced that they have exercised half of their options for the Boeing 787 Dreamliner. The firm order for the Dreamliners is now at 37 plus 23 options, for a total of 60. This makes Air Canada the largest customer of the Dreamliner in North America and the third largest in the world. They also announced the cancellation of orders for 2 Boeing 777-FS. In November 2007, Air Canada announced that they will lease an additional Boeing 777-300ER from ILFC. Air Canada has now taken delivery of the 18 Boeing 777s on order and still holds options for 16 more, totaling 34. Air Canada has also taken delivery of 15 Embraer 175s and 45 Embraer 190s. These aircraft are being used to expand intra-Canada and Canada-USA routes. Air Canada will transfer all 15 Embraer 175s to Sky Regional Airlines to fly them under the Air Canada Express brand. They will also transfer all Airbus A319-100 and Boeing 767-300ER aircraft to Air Canada Rouge. Project XM. Started in July 2006 and now completed, Project XM, Extreme Makeover, is a $300 million aircraft interior replacement project to install new cabins on all aircraft. New aircraft such as the Boeing 777 are being delivered with the new cabins factory installed. New cabin features include, in Executive First, new horizontal fully flat Executive First suites. New cabins in all classes on all aircraft, with new entertainment options. Personal AVOD in economy class and executive class. Larger AVOD equipped with noise-cancelling Sennheiser headphones available in Executive First suites. Interactive games at all seats in Executive and Economy. XM Radio Canada available at every seat. USB ports to recharge electronic devices and for game controllers at all seats. 120-volt AC plugs in most seats. In Economy. In First Class Executive, financial difficulties. Since the late 2000s, Air Canada has been facing a number of financial difficulties, including the global recession, leading to speculation that they could file for bankruptcy, less than a decade after they exited bankruptcy on September 30, 2004. President and CEO Monty Brewer was replaced by Calin Ravanescu effective April 1, 2009. Ravanescu became the first Canadian president since Claude Taylor in 1992. Ravanescu was Air Canada's chief restructuring officer during their 2003 bankruptcy, and he resigned that year after unions rejected his demands, and is reported to be an enforcer. Federal Finance Minister Jim Flaherty appointed retired Judge James Farley, who had presided over Air Canada's 2003 bankruptcy, to mediate pension issues between the company and their unions and retirees. The contracts with 4 of their unions also expired around this time. The airline stated that their $2.85 billion pension shortfall was a liquidity risk in its first quarter report, and it required new financing and pension relief to conserve cash for 2010 operations. The company was obligated to pay $650 million into the pension fund, but it suffered a 2009 Q1 loss of $400 million, so it requested a moratorium on its pension payments in 2009. The unions had insisted on financial guarantees before agreeing on a deal. In 2013, Air Canada's practice of systematic overbooking was exposed. This much criticized strategy, in which the same seat is sold to more than one person, thereby causing ticket-holding passengers to be bumped and left stranded, persuaded the federal government to consider adopting an airline passenger bill of rights. Corporate Affairs, Headquarters. By federal law, Air Canada has been obligated to keep their head office in Montreal. Their corporate headquarters is Air Canada Centre, also known as La Rondelle, a 7-story building located on the grounds of Montreal Copyright Al Pierre Elliott Trudeau International Airport in Saint Laurent. In 1975, Air Canada was headquartered at One Place Ville Marie in Montreal. In 1990, the airline announced that they were moving their headquarters to the airport to cut costs. In 2011, Air Canada announced that they were moving 125 crew schedulers from their Montreal headquarters to Toronto. Business trends: Air Canada has been loss-making for several years. 2012 was the first year since 2007 that a post-tax profit was achieved. The key trends for the Air Canada Group, including Jazz and Air Canada Rouge, are executives. Prior to 1976, Air Canada was led by a department head of the Canadian National Railway, who reported to the president of CNR. CEO and President, 1976–1984, Claude Taylor, accountant. Former Air Canada reservation agent and executive, 1984–1990, Pierre Gignaut, former aircraft mechanic and Air Canada executive, 1990–1992, Claude Taylor, 1992–1996, Hollis L. Harris, 1996–1999, Alamar Durrett, 1999 Euro 2004, Robert Milton, 2004 Euro 2009, Monty Brewer, 2009 Euro present, Calin Ravanescu. Subsidiaries, Air Canada Cargo. Air Canada Cargo is the company's freight-carrying division, offering more than 150 shipping destinations through the Air Canada airline network and airline partners. Their route network has focused on European destinations through their Eastern Canada departure points, along with direct services from Vancouver and Calgary to Frankfurt, Paris, and Zurich. In Toronto, a new cargo terminal was completed in early 2002 which features modernized inventory and conveyor systems. Air Canada Vacations. Air Canada Vacations is a Canadian tour operator offering leisure travel packages including cruises, tours, car rentals and excursions. All packages include accommodation, aeroplan miles and round-trip airfare aboard Air Canada and its Star Alliance partners. Repeat recipient of the Consumer Euro Unregistered Trademark Choice Award for Best Travel Wholesaler and named Favorite Tour Operator by Baxter Travel Media in 2010, Air Canada Vacation services hundreds of destinations in the Caribbean, Mexico, North, Central and South America, Asia, South Pacific and Europe. Air Canada Vacations is headquartered in Montreal, has an office in Toronto, and destination representatives are available throughout the Caribbean, Mexico, Europe, Asia, South Pacific, and South America. Air Canada Vacations offers executive class service on select flights, non-stop flights from major Canadian cities and daily flights to many destinations. Air Canada Rouge. Air Canada Express. Air Canada Express is the brand name of Air Canada's regional feeder service operated by several independent carriers including Jazz Aviation, Sky Regional Airlines, Exploits Valley Air Services, and Air Georgian. Former subsidiaries, Air Canada Jazz. In 2001, Air Canada consolidated their wholly owned regional carriers Air BC, Air Nova, Air Ontario, and Canadian Regional Airlines into Air Canada Regional Incorporated. In 2002, the consolidation was completed with the creation of a new brand, Air Canada Jazz. Air Canada Jazz was spun off in November 2006. ACE Aviation Holdings is no longer a shareholder of Jazz Aviation LP, making them an independent company. Air Canada Jazz was the brand name of Air Canada's main regional product from 2002 to 2011. As of June 2011, the Air Canada Jazz brand is no longer being marketed as all regional operators adopted the Air Canada Express name. Although, most Air Canada Jazz planes retain the Jazz decal and the iconic green-orange maple leaf paint scheme. Jazz Aviation is the largest of these affiliates operating 125 aircraft on behalf of Air Canada. ZIP. In 2002, Air Canada launched a discount airline to compete directly with WestJet on routes in Western Canada. ZIP operated ex-Canadian Airlines International 737-200s as a separate airline with their own staff and brightly painted aircraft. It was disbanded in 2004. Air Canada Tango. On November 1, 2001, Air Canada launched Air Canada Tango, designed to offer no-frills service and lower fares using a dedicated fleet of 13 Airbus A320s in an all-economy configuration of 159 seats. In Canada, they operated from Toronto to Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, Winnipeg, Regina, Saskatoon, Thunder Bay, Ottawa, Montreal, Halifax, Gander and St. John's. In addition, they operated non-stop service between Toronto and Fort Lauderdale, Orlando and Tampa, as well as non-stop service between Montreal and Fort Lauderdale and Orlando. Tango was intended to compete with Canada 3000. The Tango service was dissolved in 2004. Air Canada now calls their lowest fare class Tango. Aeroplan. Aeroplan is Air Canada's loyalty marketing program operated by Groupe Aeroplan Incorporated, which was spun off from Air Canada in 2005. Air Canada Jazz. Launched in 2002, Air Canada Jazz was a charter service targeting sports teams, professional entertainers, and corporations. Air Canada Jazz fleet consisted of 4 Airbus A319 in an all-business class configuration. In February 2014, Air Canada announced that it was exiting the sports charter business. The planes will be reconfigured and placed with Air Canada's low-cost division, Rouge. Destinations. Air Canada flies to 21 domestic destinations and 81 international destinations across Asia, Americas, Europe, and Oceania. Along with its regional partners, the carrier serves over 181 destinations in 46 countries on 5 continents worldwide. Air Canada has flown a number of Fifth Freedom routes, only one of which is still operated, namely Santiago-Buenos Aires. Past Fifth Freedom routes have included Honolulu-Sydney, London Heathrow-Darwin Düsseldorf, Paris-Geneva, Paris-Munich, Paris-Berlin, Frankfurt-Saar-1 Zagreb, Zaar-1 Vienna, Zaar-1 Delhi, Lisbon-Madrid, Brussels-Prague, London Heathrow-Delhi, London Heathrow-Nice, London Heathrow-Bombay Singapore. Code share agreements. Air Canada has code share agreements with the following airlines. Notes indicate Star Alliance partners. Air Canada is one of the founding members of Star Alliance. Fleet. Current fleet. The Air Canada fleet consists of 196 aircraft. All mainline aircraft are fitted with individual video displays in all classes. The majority of the wide-body aircraft operate from Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver and Calgary. Air Canada has an average fleet age of 15.5 years. Historic fleet. In 1963, Air Canada claimed to be the first major air carrier to have adopted turbine technology on its entire fleet for lower maintenance costs and higher productivity. It also claimed to be the first world airline to introduce jet freighter service using DC-8 equipment. Air Canada was also one of the first airlines to have its entire fleet of unpressurized aircraft equipped with fixed oxygen systems for use by flight crew and passengers, using the rebreathing bag principle. Air Canada's McDonnell Douglas DC-9-15s were used up to 1986. One McDonnell Douglas DC-9-32CF was used for cargo flights until 1977. The McDonnell Douglas DC-9-32s were used from 1967 to 2002. Air Canada's Airbus A340-500s were retired in August 2007 and replaced by Boeing 777-200LRs. Air Canada's Airbus A340-300s were retired in November 2008 and replaced by Boeing 777-300ERs. Air Canada's Boeing 767-200ER fleet was retired from service by the end of 2008. The Boeing 767 involved in the Gimli incident remained in service with Air Canada until it retired in 2008. The aircraft now sits at the Majave Spaceport in California. The McDonnell Douglas DC-10 aircraft were operated from 1979 to 2000 by Canadian Pacific Airlines and its successor Canadian Airlines. The Boeing 737-200 aircraft were operated from 1968 to 2000 by Canadian Pacific Airlines and its successor Canadian Airlines. The following is a list of aircraft that Air Canada has operated since 1937, and are now no longer in the fleet. Services. Air Canada has two classes of service, both business and economy, on most aircraft. On long-haul international routes, international business class and economy class is offered, with certain flights additionally offering premium economy class. Short-haul and domestic routes feature business class and economy class. All mainline seats feature AVOD and mood lighting. Air Canada Express features business class and economy class, on CRJ 705 and Embraer 175 aircraft. All other Air Canada Express aircraft have one-class economy cabins. In the spring of 1987, Air Canada enacted no-smoking flights between Canada and New York City as a test. After a survey reported that 96% of passengers supported the smoking ban, Air Canada extended the ban to other flights. Cabins. International business class. Air Canada's international business class cabins are available on all wide-body aircraft. There are 3 different cabins available: the Executive Pod, the Classic Pod, and the Studio Pod. All services feature AVOD on a touchscreen, noise-cancelling headphones, and music provided by XM Satellite Radio. Executive Pod. Executive pods are used on all Boeing 787s. These seats feature electronic flatbeds in a 1 Euro 2 Euro 1 reverse herringbone configuration with a 21-inch seat width and a 6'7" seat pitch. AVOD is provided with an 18-inch touchscreen. Classic Pod. Classic pods feature electronic flatbeds, in a 1 Euro 1 Euro 1 or 1 Euro 2 Euro 1 herringbone configuration with a 21-inch seat width and a 6'3" seat pitch. The configuration is similar in layout to Virgin Atlantic's Upper Class Suite and Air New Zealand's Business Premier Class product. AVOD is provided with an 12-inch touchscreen. Self-service bar areas are available on all Boeing 777-200LR and Boeing 777-300ER aircraft. Studio Pod. Select Boeing 777-300ERs on high-density routes use studio pods. These seats feature electronic flatbeds in a staggered 1 Euro 2 Euro 1 and 2 Euro 2 Euro 2 configuration with a 20.5-inch seat width and a 6 to 6 foot seat pitch. AVOD is provided with an 15.4-inch touchscreen. Premium Economy Class. On February 7, 2013, Air Canada announced its plan for installing Premium Economy Class products on 5 of its Boeing 777 aircraft, as well as on low-cost flights operated by Air Canada Rouge. Premium Economy Class will also be available on Boeing 787 aircraft. Premium Economy features a larger seat and greater recline as compared to Economy Class, in a 2 Euro 4 Euro 2 configuration or 2-3-2 configuration with a 20-inch or 19.5-inch seat width and a 38-inch seat pitch. Entertainment on the Boeing 777-300ER and Boeing 787-8 is personal AVOD, while music is provided by XM Satellite Radio. The only Air Canada routes featuring Premium Economy Class cabin are Montreal, Paris, Montreal, London, Toronto, Vancouver, Hong Kong, Vancouver, London and will be available on Toronto, Tokyo Haneda flights in mid-2014. Air Canada Rouge operates flights on its 767 aircraft with a Premium Economy Class product as well. International Economy Class. In International Economy Class, seats are pitched 31 to 34 inches with a width of 17.2 to 18.5 inches and a recline to around 6 inches with personal AVOD. Configuration is 3 Euro 3 Euro 3 or 3 Euro 4 Euro 3 on the Boeing 777, 3 Euro 3 Euro 3 on the Boeing 787, 2 Euro 4 Euro 2 on the A330, and 2 Euro 3 Euro 2 on the Boeing 767. Music is provided by XM Satellite Radio. North American Business Class. Within North America, business class is Air Canada a Euro 1 registered trademark as premium product. On Embraer 190 aircraft and Embraer 175 and CRJ 705 aircraft, the seat configuration is 1 Euro 2 abreast, with recline around 120 a degree, and a width of 20 inches. On Airbus narrow-body aircraft, seat configuration is 2 Euro 2 abreast, with 124 a degree recline, and 21 inches width. Seat pitch is 37 inches on CRJ 705 aircraft and 39 inches on Embraer and Airbus aircraft. All seats feature AVOD and the new style cabin interiors. Music is provided by XM Satellite Radio. North American Economy Class. Economy seating for domestic, North American, Sun destination and Caribbean flights is 3 Euro 3 abreast on Airbus aircraft and 2 Euro 2 on Bombardier and Embraer aircraft, with a pitch between 30 and 32 inches on Airbus aircraft. For these flights food and alcoholic beverages can be purchased through onboard CAFR copyright while non-alcoholic beverages are complimentary. Guest luggage point-of-sale terminals are used. On all A320 series planes and Embraer E-jets, there is an extra legroom preferred seat section in the front rows and exit rows of the economy cabin which provides a full 35 inches of seat pitch. Air Canada Rouge offers Rouge Plus on their whole fleet, which is identical to the preferred seats, but with the addition of 2 inches of extra recline. Air Canada Express flights operated by CRJ 200-8 to 100,400 aircraft offer a bar and refreshment service on board. The CRJ 705 and E175 features business class and personal AVOD at every seat. Flights on board the E175, CRJ 200/705 and Q400 which are 90 minutes or more feature board CAFAR copyright. Cabin crew, Air Canada has made a change in uniform by changing the dark green for a midnight blue color. The uniforms were designed by Canadian fashion designer Debbie Shahot. At a presentation in the Toronto Pearson International Airport hangar, Celine Dion helped the newly solvent airline debut its new image. Lounge. Air Canada has 21 Maple Leaf lounges located at all major airports across Canada and at international locations including London Heathrow, Paris Charles de Gaulle, Frankfurt, Los Angeles and New York LaGuardia. The Maple Leaf lounges are available to passengers holding a same-day ticket on Air Canada in business class, Star Alliance Gold members, Air Canada Super Elite, Air Canada Elite, Air Canada Maple Leaf Club members, American Express Maple Leaf Club members, American Express Aeroplan Plus Platinum holders, holders of a one-time guest pass or economy passengers who have purchased lounge access during booking. Air Canada shares an arrivals lounge at London Heathrow Terminal 2 with some other Star Alliance members. It is available to eligible passengers arriving into London from any Air Canada international flight, holding a confirmed same-day overseas travel boarding card. Eligible groups include business class passengers, Air Canada Super Elite, Air Canada Elite, Air Canada Maple Leaf Club members or American Express Maple Leaf Club. U.S. business traveler international stopover strategy, Air Canada has started to pursue American-based business travelers from departure airports which do not have direct connections to Europe and abroad, and use Canadian airports like Montreal, Toronto Pearson and Vancouver to make their connection through Canada. Frequent Flyer Program, Aeroplan. Aeroplan is Air Canada's frequent flyer program. Miles are awarded to members and can be redeemed for rewards on airline tickets, reservations at hotel chains and car rental agencies, or for merchandise or charitable donations. Accumulated miles will expire if an account does not show any activity for 1 full year. Aeroplan has had a mileage expiry policy since 1997. Air Canada applies a fuel surcharge under taxes and fees, when booking awards. It's possible to avoid the fuel surcharge by flying with a partner airline. Air Canada Altitude. On September 20, 2012, Air Canada announced its new frequent flyer program named Air Canada Altitude. There are 5 membership tiers: Altitude Prestige 25K, Altitude Elite 35K, Altitude Elite 50K, Altitude Elite 75K, and Altitude Super Elite 100K. Qualified Altitude Prestige 25K and Altitude Elite 35K are entitled to Star Alliance Silver status, while members of the other 3 tiers are entitled to Star Alliance Gold status. Incidents and accidents. See also: ACE Aviation Holdings, Air Canada Rouge, Chorus Aviation, Jazz Aviation LP, List of Airlines of Canada, List of Airports in Canada, List of Companies of Canada, Transport in Canada, Air Transport in Canada. References. Further reading: MacArthur, Keith. Air Monopoly, How Robert Milton's Air Canada Won and Lost Control of Canada's Skies. M&S ISBN A0-7710-5688-5. Milton, Robert. Straight from the Top, The Truth About Air Canada. Greystone Books. ISBN A1-55365-051-4. External links: Official website, Air Canada Boeing 787 Dreamliner official website, Air Canada Vacations official website, Air Canada Jazz, CBC Digital Archive. Euro Turbulent Skies, The Air Canada Story, Air Canada Pilots Association, Air Canada Flight Attendant component of CUPE.